Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on the websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use, or just a thumbs up on YouTube, Mr. Brent. If you'd like to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join everybody in the live chats, including Mr. Brent. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Brent. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Today. Not in general? Just
Not
like
in general,
right now?
just this moment.
Good. It's good to be back.
But like in general, are you bad?
I'm more excited right this moment than I was just the moment before.
That's great.
So, there you
okay,
go. How about
okay. I like it. It's the hockey stick. Anna, how you doing this week?
Doing great, thanks.
Oh, very good. Everyone's in chipper spirits this day, this episode. Well, before we get started, we have another word from our sponsor. One of the long-lasting impacts of COVID-19 and the global pandemic it created has been the priority now being placed on long-term enterprise-wide planning. Join me and Jeff as we discuss Oracle NetSuite's newest white paper, The Ultimate Guide to Scenario Planning. You can hear about the new strategies and steps you can use to de-risk your organization. Register for it. Download it. What is it? Download it? Register? Get in there and look at it. Listen to it.
Download to register.
Read
Register
it.
to download.
Get it. All right. Our first story this week, the abandonment of cities and towns in the Heartland.
Starting off really light.
We need more like sound effects. Dun, dun, dun. All right. I can try to keep it light. In his latest column, IEN and Manufacturing.net contributor Mike Collins discusses the victims of outsourcing and NAFTA, primarily focusing on the towns. Citing examples from Newton, Iowa, Galesburg, Illinois, Dayton, Ohio, and Muncie, Indiana, Collins asks, quote, "If free trade is good for the nation, why haven't the benefits reached the towns and cities?" He says the answer is simple. These workers and cities were sacrificed so that consumers could enjoy cheap imported goods. After 40 years of outsourcing to low-cost countries, Collins says America has lost 7.5 million manufacturing jobs, closed 80,000 manufacturing establishments, and destroyed many American towns and communities. He says, quote, "Free trade became a one-sided process where the benefits flowed to capital and labor costs. It is socialism for capital and free market for labor. For many working Americans, it has become a race to the bottom." Put differently, the deindustrialization of America is the direct result of decisions made by corporate and government leaders to pursue economic profit rather than the good of either communities or the country. He holds America's multinationals most responsible for what has happened to the employees, communities, manufacturing companies, suppliers, and a good part of the middle class. So, the big question he wants to know is, why should middle-class workers be asked to do all the sacrificing while the multinationals and their shareholders gain all the spoils? Jeff?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about this article, though. First time I had a chance to see when Mike sent it in, it really resonated on a couple of different levels. Mm-hmm. If you've read anything from Mike, you know he is not a fan of all these free trade agreements. He really blames them for a lot of the issues that we're encountering now in terms of manufacturing on the decline and some of the job issues, as well as some of the inflationary economic dynamics that we're also dealing with. He really ties it together very strongly, and I can appreciate where he's coming from in a lot of ways, certainly with a lot of the free trade agreements, because essentially what's happened there, I think it's pretty well documented. The countries that are coming into the U.S. are definitely benefiting. Us trying to get into those other markets, not so much. And you can definitely see the ripple effect or the cause that that's had on U.S.-based manufacturing as a result. Yeah. So I would agree with him there. The one thing that he doesn't go into as much detail, and maybe where I have a little bit of a disagreement with him, is when we talk about a lot of the offshoring of jobs really creating this huge issue, and it's all focused basically on shareholders and corporate greed, there is a consumer dynamic there too.
Yeah.
The consumers have embraced the desire to purchase potentially lower quality goods at a lower price as well. So there is a market factor there that plays a part too.
Yeah.
Now, I would also not argue that all of these different dynamics have led to this disparity between, I guess, what I would say maybe the upper middle and the lower middle class. I mean, that is broadening, that's growing. There's no way to sidestep that. So there's a lot of different stuff that you can dive into with this article. Coming from a small town where we had just a couple of factories, now it was primarily primarily agriculture where I grew up, but we did have these factories in town that over time, less opportunity there, fewer jobs there, and eventually they did shut down. And that does affect, I mean, the town I grew up in was nowhere near the size of a lot of these that he referenced in the article. But you could definitely still see an impact in terms of how that affected discretionary income, infrastructure, things of that nature when you don't have some of those larger enterprises or even a mid-sized manufacturing business there to support things from a tax-based perspective. So all of that was really interesting. The thing that really got me is, and I'm going to read this section. It was maybe the one part of the article you didn't go over there in the intro, David.
Well, it is a meaty article.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah, like trying to sum it up, like.
No, I found the one part you didn't. You basically didn't go over, and this is the part that really grabbed me, I guess. It's in a 2021 report, Gone for Good, Deindustrialization, White Voter Backlash, and U.S. Presidential Voting. I'm reading really well today.
That's okay. We'll just increase the size of the font.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to
The authors argue that deindustrialization threatens dominant group status, including some white voters in affected localities, to favor candidates they believe will address economic distress and defend racial hierarchy. This one really got my attention, and I know we don't get into politics on this podcast. I'm not trying to, but one of the things that I've always sort of just tried to understand is this gravitation towards Donald Trump, okay? I've understood everybody has their guy, okay? But when you look at a lot of these supporters of his, they are so vehemently behind him and just so thoroughly convinced that he is the man for the job. And there's nothing you could say that's going to dissuade their opinion. And when you look at a lot at what Mike talks about in here about how everybody in, economic analysts have said, well, less manufacturing, we're deindustrializing, but there's more of a service opportunity. We become more of a service-based market. You can see how there is definitely a generation of individuals out there who are saying, I didn't ask for this change.
Yeah.
I wanted to be working in manufacturing. I didn't want to transition to a service-based economy. So when you get somebody who comes in, who sort of feeds into some of those same beliefs and talks about all of these things that have happened in the past under different regimes and starts promising more manufacturing type jobs or sort of speaks their language to this effect. And there's an underlying sort of, as it was alluded to here, racial hierarchy element involved. I guess the light bulb kind of went on for me in terms of maybe how he resonates so strongly with so many people. Because you do see a lot of individuals that voted for Donald Trump that were not involved with politics in any way, shape, or form prior to him sort of coming to the forefront. So I thought the article, can't recommend it enough in terms of checking it out. Mike has a very, very sort of, I guess, there's no doubt where he stands on things.
Very clear voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very plain speaking, very straightforward in what he believes and what he thinks. And it was a lot of very interesting things to dissect. And I guess those were the biggest takeaways for me in looking at the article.
No, I like being able to continue the conversation online as well, where there's been a number of comments on this, people talking about what NAFTA and some of these trade deals have meant to them and their jobs. You mentioned, and you're right, there's a lot to unpack. Nothing that we could ever completely get to. It would be an entire podcast. We could spend an entire podcast on this. Two that you had mentioned, though, that I wanted to jump into were consumers and the middle class. Do you think consumers have changed the way they shop as a result of some of the impacts that we've seen as a result of deindustrialization? Do you think consumers are making different choices now, buying more American, trying to do what they can? Or do you think the majority of consumers are still just like, hey, I want the cheapest toaster, man?
I think it depends,
Yeah.
on the product itself, where they're shopping, what the options are. I think if it's considered somewhat of a commodity type item that either you're going to replace or you're not expecting a ton out of, you do tend to grab the cheapest one. I think over maybe the last decade, there has been a greater awareness in terms of what that means, in terms of buying the low cost leader, if you will, as opposed to maybe investing in something, or if it does have that Made in America stamp on it. I'm not going to go so far as to say that's changed people dramatically, but I think there's a greater awareness of it. And I think at least there's a pause when they go to make those purchasing decisions. I think everybody looks for that sort of three options. You've got your high, middle, and low cost. And I think there is at least an acknowledgement of what it means if you go the low cost way every single time.
Yeah, at least when it comes to groceries, I know that when I see that something from Wisconsin stamp on something, I am willing to pay a little bit more for that.
Agreed.
It just happened with like a giant bottle of maple syrup. I've never been happier. One thing about manufacturing is how closely tied it is to the health of the middle class. Some say we don't even have a middle class anymore. Do you think the middle class as we knew it pre-NAFTA would ever come back? I know, something easy.
Yeah, this is a massive question. I think economically things have changed a bit. That's for sure. I mean, there's been an issue with wages not really keeping pace with costs. So obviously that's a challenge. Housing costs are incredibly high as well. The deck feels stacked against a lot of working people. I think we all see that a little bit. I thought this article was interesting as well. Mike, as you said, you know where he stands, but what I like about his writing is he will take a pretty unvarnished look at whatever issue, and he's pretty nonpartisan about it. He calls people out from both sides of the aisle. He'll, pat somebody on the back when he sees fit to do that, but I don't feel like he's speaking to one group or another, which is...
This one in particular, he's just like, which 3 different presidential administrations dropped the ball on? So, everyone's in his crosshairs.
For sure, yeah. I think one of the things that stands out to me in talking about this topic is about corporations behind some of these moves to offshore, placing their focuses on profits over community. I think the business world has become so tethered to this idea of shareholder value. And I mean, if you look at, we pay our chief executives such a staggering amount of money at these corporations. And so they really, in desperation to keep their jobs, they want to make sure that they're as profitable as they possibly can be. So you see, to me, I'm like, imagine if it were the employees that were deciding who was their chief executive.
Yeah.
Be an entirely different set of objectives, I think. So if profits are the number one goal, then those corporate leaders, I think they're going to find a way to make that happen no matter what. But I do think it's fair to say also that there are other variables in play here. Cities have been losing manufacturing activity for decades to rural areas. So I think let's not forget that despite that, the success stories are not listed here in this article, there are plenty of areas that have seen a boost based on, plant activity shifting domestically versus being offshored. Yeah. Remember that the U.S. is the second largest exporter of goods. It's not as if we do not manufacture anything anymore because we do. That I think is a big misnomer. People get that wrong a lot. They think the U.S. doesn't make anything anymore. That's not true. I think secondly, we're in this now strange position where businesses are suffering, even shuttering locations because they don't have the talent to staff their plants. Yeah. So I think one could say that the staffing issue maybe is one that comes downstream of a perception issue. Maybe that's, this idea that manufacturing doesn't produce good jobs, so don't work in manufacturing. Maybe that's an argument that chases its own tail. I don't know. But I do think it's relevant to say that we may now be at a point where this argument is looking backwards on where we took a wrong turn, and there's nothing that we can do at this point because the economy has changed. The workforce has changed. And Donald Trump tried this tariff stuff, and he, tariffed the hell out of China really for a while. But that didn't exactly get the results that anybody wanted. It didn't create more manufacturing jobs. There was raw material challenges that came out of it, higher prices for consumers in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that is some sort of panacea to solve this problem now, because to your point, things have shifted. This is not the economy of the 1970s. It's not the middle class of the 1980s. It's not.
Yeah. Well, and Collins does acknowledge that Trump was, the one president that's tried to do something and saw minimal effect. And the one point I should have added about, will we ever see the middle class as we once knew it? I guess what I wanted to tack onto that was how we have this sort of, I believe, delusion as to what reshoring could offer America. And I think that it is this ideal that we can go back in time with this old school manufacturing landscape. And I think that's why the allure of reshoring is there, but like the reality of it is nearshoring.
Well, I think some of those reshoring stats also get a little bit skewed because they talk about foreign direct investment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's good. I don't want to dissuade that in any way, shape, or form, but it's not like a job coming back. It's basically somebody from another country investing here at a current U.S. facility.
Yeah.
Still positive, and still a gain, but you're not getting anything back. Mm-hmm. You're growing where you are, basically.
Well, and one point you raised, Jeff, was about Trump's appeal. And I will say, to his benefit, and we talked about it on the podcast while he was doing it, he spoke directly to the manufacturing workforce, past, present, and future, and they felt heard in a way that they hadn't from any president or candidate that I could remember in recent history. And honestly, until Biden came out with these UAW talks, and he put on the shirt, he I can't remember what his quotes were, but essentially praising the efforts of the union to raise rates for the entire workforce. We hadn't seen that, and it'll be interesting to see if it can work for Biden the same way it did for Trump. I doubt it. And also because, there's like the union tie too. But I don't know. Like, I think that was part of Trump's appeal, though, is that he spoke directly to those people.
Well, I guess the thing that got me, and maybe I'm I don't know, late to the party or just didn't think about it as much before, but did that kind of stick with you guys too when he talked about, because I haven't seen that before, this transition to a service-based economy that everybody was sort of embracing. I can remember my dad talking to me when I got out of college. He was a tool and die maker for 40 years and basically was very happy that I was going into more of a, I guess you could say, office job, something that wasn't involved in being on the plant floor, because he was at that ebb where manufacturing was seeing a downturn. We hadn't had all these conversations about these are good jobs. Yeah. There's a lot of technology involved. This is not the greasy, grimy work floor or plant floor op environment that you've seen before, but we still made this transition, and everybody who was a talking head was embracing it. But the individuals who are expected to transition from the plant floor to these service jobs maybe were not very receptive to it.
Yeah.
And that was something I guess I should have thought about more, but I didn't, in that element, because I was just thinking about me personally being, I've worked on the plant floor all through college. I like going to an air-conditioned office better,
Yeah. No, I've tried to clean silicone off of a screw. I don't want to do that for 40 years,
Yeah. But some people
do. I mean, well, like, and we've talked about the value people find in manufacturing jobs in creating tangible products that are used. And I don't know, I feel like part of us, we were part of the generation though that was, pushed away from manufacturing, but it's crazy that, my brother, who is just 2 years younger, and my other brother, who's just 4 years younger, the transition happened where they were able to enter and find successful careers in manufacturing. Maybe the window was that close. I don't know. Or maybe I was just at the tail end of it. And I know that we've gone long on this segment. The one other thing that I wanted to talk about is he does mention the ripple effect, which we've mentioned multiple times on the podcast, and what it does to these communities, right? We're talking about the sudden loss of manufacturing jobs that creates this economic ripple effect. People and their tax money leave, which leads to cuts in public services, closing of shops, grocery stores, boarding up businesses, foreclosures, leaving homes, falling home prices, blight. And we've seen it everywhere. And it is a ripple effect that is longstanding. Like we've seen, when did manufacturing leave parts of Milwaukee and Racine and Wisconsin that are just now, they're trying to redevelop those areas. Like they were blighted for decades.
Well, Janesville, Wisconsin wasn't on his list, but definitely
I thought it was going to be. Yeah. Janesville, I feel like, is a top 5 one. In this decay, which he talks about, just begets more decay and leads to increases in crime, depression, and hopelessness. Probably ties to the opioid epidemic as well in these areas. So I don't know. The quickest thing to say is check out this article if you haven't read it yet, and let us know what you guys think. Because there has been a healthy conversation online, and I'd like to continue it. All right. Our next most popular story. I don't know if it's like sunnier, but we'll get into it. All right.
We'll see.
Folks lining up for Elon Musk's brain implants. Neuralink is Elon Musk's brain implant startup. While it has its fair share of critics, it has generated a lot of optimism for the thousands of potential patients interested in human trials. Earlier this year, the company received FDA approval to begin human trials and began recruiting. The company's first human brain implants will start with 11 surgeries planned for next year. By 2030, they want to be performing more than 22,000 a year. Neuralink has been on the lookout for people under 40 with paralysis in their limbs. The idea is the company's implants will be able to read signals from the brain and convert them into computer commands. Neuralink hopes the brain implants could one day help restore vision, hearing, and movement for patients. For the first human trials, the implantation will involve removing portions of their skulls before having a Neuralink-designed surgical robot insert thin electrodes into the brain. After the procedure, the patient will be left with a small implant that sits flush with their scalp. And while these Neuralinks have a fairly short battery life, it can be wirelessly recharged with this really cool, specially designed baseball hat designed just for patients. And that's the part that blew my mind. Neuralink, other than the brain implants, Neuralink employees have acknowledged that the trial and error in other Musk ventures, like SpaceX's early rockets exploding, can happen at Neuralink. Siobhan Zillis, Neuralink's director of special projects, told Bloomberg, quote, "We can't blow up the first 3. That's not an option here." Jeff.
Thank you for recognizing.
Obviously, the most obvious, sometimes it's great when a quote just comes out and says the most obvious thing everybody's thinking. But this was a really interesting article because it talks about a technology that stands to change the lives of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. Millions of people. But if done the wrong way, could go real bad.
So let's start with the good stuff here.
Let's start with the good stuff.
Okay. I think what's really interesting that you're talking about a procedure that also integrates a robot right from the start. We know the Da Vinci robot that was sort of the groundbreaker. So as we gravitate towards more autonomous robotic surgery, seeing that implemented right from the start, I think is really, really positive, especially when you look at expanding the reach of medical care into more rural areas, trying to scale up robotics use within the medical industry. The more we have them, the more scale there is. Hopefully costs come down, reliability goes up, all of those things. So I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
We also have a potential patient group of over 5 million Americans that suffer some form of paralysis.
Yeah.
And being close to somebody who has multiple sclerosis diagnosis, this resonates. Mm-hmm. Everything they talk about here. So the potential opportunities and positive things that could come out of here are great. And you love to see a guy who's as innovative as Elon Musk get involved and really show so much passion for this type of project.
Mm-hmm.
However,
there was a but.
There was a however.
We also have Elon Musk, and you can tell this type of thing, this is sort of his mantra when they talk about scaling from 11 to 22,000 in the course of 6 years. Yeah. Most human trials for drugs, okay, forget a surgery, forget an implant, just for a drug, we're looking at can get upwards of a decade or more.
Yeah.
Okay. So pump the brakes.
Yeah.
It was good to get more depth because we've kind of heard about Neuralink before. It's just sort of this pie in the sky idea that was out there from Elon Musk. So there's more depth on it, which is great. The FDA approval is great that they can start, but by the sounds of it, you do have very, very smart people who with medical backgrounds here are talking about this in the right light in terms of the pace. But when you do see that type of scale up put in print, that has to be more than just like for potential investors to get them excited. If you want to put that in some sort of prospectus, that's fine. You start putting that in print, that makes people, or at least it should make people want to pump the brakes and worry a little bit about the pace that you're going after. And it generates quotes like making sure you're not comparing patients to rockets.
Exactly.
So,
well, John Dearden, who's joining us live, always good to hear from you, John. He says this is the modern day stent. And I agree, because this is going to, if and when it works, revolutionize medicine and hopefully stop there. Anna, now we talk a lot about how Musk's drive and how he pushes his employees has caused problems, but could there be like a healthy middle where like by pushing he could disrupt a medical industry that sometimes moves a little too slow, but they can push back enough to be like, hey, these are brains. Easy.
I'm kind of in the middle on that. I think it's clear that he's already disrupted this category significantly.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Neuralink has made a lot of progress where other companies are, that started earlier are now behind.
Right.
But I do have concerns about Elon Musk at the wheel. And it's hard for him to pump the brakes. I think he takes the brakes out of everything that he drives. He takes the brakes out of that Tesla. I read the Bloomberg article that Ben sort of summarized here in this report, and it is very long, but it was quite interesting. So the author has visited the Neuralink facilities, I think something like 11 times.
Yeah, 10 or 11 times.
Yeah.
And has tremendous insight.
On this company, the inner workings. One of the paragraphs that stuck out was where the author said unrealistic timetables are one of Musk's favorite management techniques. And then it says, to his credit, he's made several improbable dreams come true eventually. But while rockets and cars are serious business, neural implants require perfection on a whole other level. One does not rush a brain implant to market and hope for the best.
Yes.
Yes, I think we can all agree on that. But that is the track record that he has in his other companies. The report adds that Musk's, quote, increasingly manic and reactionary online persona has done little to suggest he stands as the ideal candidate to mass produce mind control devices. Which, yeah, all this rhetoric, though, is paired with the author's super positive sentiment about the possibilities and sort of basic endorsement of the team that he has working with him. So,
because I feel like he was stuck or the author was stuck in the middle too.
I think so. And I think because so many people want this to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if SpaceX works, great. Mm-hmm. But if this works, I mean, you talk about it a lot, right? Like, let's fix the problems on Earth first. Yeah. And so there's a lot more at stake with this one. For sure. And, people's quality of life, like that's that's something worth taking some risks on to make sure that people can live a positive life and an active life. And to me, it's like, it's really anybody's guess at this point what happens next, because you have a person trumpeting this technology that people don't necessarily trust. And I also don't think scenarios like we've seen in recent years, like the Titan submersible and like Theranos, where it became clear that these half-baked ideas were able to reach market and reach a point where they had funding, they had impressive research teams, and all of that, and still not even be viable or necessarily safe. Sometimes that's what you get when you, as an outsider looking at these startups, especially when you have somebody like Elon Musk who has a history of overpromising and underdelivering. So I think what is working for Neuralink, and this is sort of sad, but there's a lot of people that are going to, I think, inevitably participate in these trials because they're so desperate for a solution and they don't see any other way of going about that. And if it works, that's great. If it doesn't, then that's devastating, So I don't know. One more thing. I just read an article about a woman who had a piece of her brain removed to help control her epileptic seizures, and it worked. And
I think we know a lot more about the brain now than we used to. So I really do hope for the best here. I think there is a lot of hoping for the best and crossing our fingers, which could be a problem. I don't know.
With Elon Musk, it's never the moonshot he's taking. It's how quickly he wants to get there that causes the concern.
Well, and I'm not staunch, but I'm an Elon Musk supporter. Mm-hmm. But I will say that if one of his projects stands to benefit from maybe spinning out from under his umbrella, it's Neuralink, where maybe they could, he's already instilled the staff with this mindset. Maybe this is one that while he's going a little manic on the Twitter sphere, could just kind of go off on its own.
They have the goal, they have the talent, let them see this play out without him being necessarily like the mouthpiece of this.
And the article really does a good job of showing Musk pushing the staff, quoting him when he says like the pace of progress is too slow, step it up, let's go. One thing is that he's not just pushing Neuralink, but the competitors, I think it's Synchron and Onward as well. And while Neuralink has passed Synchron and Onward, it's kind of given them additional exposure as well. That's helped push their development forward. And one thing that the article, Bloomberg's article, does a good job describing is that in the end, it kind of doesn't matter who wins, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously it matters to the stakeholders and the company, like who wins. But like for humankind, as long as one of these three or somebody like them gets it right, that is a benefit for everyone in the world. So it is there. It's like the give and the take with Elon Musk, where if it wasn't for his direct involvement with this, Synchron and Onward could still be like at the beginning stages, like just still in the early stages. I don't know.
But like, do you want him just standing up and yelling at people to go faster? I mean, like medical progress takes a long time because of due diligence.
Yeah.
Like it is concerning to me that he's just trying to lean on people to go faster. I don't know if that is necessarily making progress.
No, I agree with you, Laura. It's got to be like metered pressure, right? Where like you don't want to like burn. I mean, I understand like you don't want to burn them out, like you've read of reports at other companies, which is why I say like now that he has this team and this mantra in place, if they could find a way with a management to maintain that going forward and kind of, he could stay on the board or something, but like a little bit further removed from day to day and the visits and the
Sure.
Hey, what are we doing? Why aren't we doing it faster? I feel like he just like walks in and he sees like people working on stuff and he's like, why is it not done yet? And he doesn't even know what they're working on. This also made me think of Lawrence Fawcett. He's the 58-year-old who was recently received his second pig heart transplant. And he just passed away earlier this month. You mentioned desperation, Anna. So many patients only know desperation. Mm-hmm. And this is hope, which is why I think there are so many people that are willing to not sacrifice, but offer themselves up for trials. Because I mean, like in the case with Mr. Fawcett, like he didn't have any more time.
Right, yeah.
A pig heart bought him a few like extra months, more time with the family. And when you're in those dire straits, you're willing to do anything. I pulled a quote from a Rolling Stone article. This is Adam Woodworth, a 40-year-old security manager for a museum in Indianapolis. He suffers from short-term memory loss due to a military injury. And his quote was, "I would love to be on the cutting edge of medical science to be able to bridge the gap of humans and technology." And I think there are a lot of Adam Woodworths out there that know there could be a cost to themselves individually, but a greater good in terms of the work going into it. So I'm inspired by this project. And honestly, based on our early predictions from when Neuralink first came out, I feel like they've already beat the odds just because we're like, oh my God, Elon Musk driven brain implant company, just like, let's see. And so I feel like they have so far exceeded expectations.
And it's not a humanoid robot that's performing the procedure.
Falling over.
So that's positive too.
Thank God.
Yeah. Hopefully those are different teams. Just like, is the same people on Optimus working on that autonomous robot that's going to do the brain implant? Why? No reason. No reason. Just curious.
It's just a brain surgeon in a robot costume.
That's fine. And well, I mean, Jeff talked about autonomous robots, but I mean, right now, just the remote operated robots. Yeah. That's incredible too. All right. Our next most popular story. First of its kind nuclear project is Terminated. Pardon me. Last week, a project that set out to build the first small modular nuclear reactor. Let me start that over just because I'm dealing with this cold and it's really getting in there. Really getting in there. All right. Last week, that's better. Last week, a project that set out to build the first small modular nuclear reactor power plant was killed. NuScale Power, which is based in Oregon, has the only reactor of this kind certified for use in the United States. For the first project, the company was working in Utah utilities to demonstrate a 6-reactor plant at the Idaho National Lab, generating enough electricity that could power more than 300,000 homes. The project was scheduled to come online starting in 2029 and was supposed to replace electricity from coal plants that are closing. Instead, NuScale and the Utah utilities involved killed the project after 10 years of work. The project fell down after it failed to find enough subscriptions from local power providers to continue. Most prospective subscribers were not willing to take the risks associated with developing a first-of-its-kind nuclear project. The Energy Department called the cancellation, quote, unfortunate news. But some officials believe the work accomplished to this date on the project will be valuable for future nuclear energy projects. Anna, I'm going to throw it to you, even though we're just teeing it up for Jeff's catchphrase. But with this project, you gotta get it work, gotta get it cooking. Okay. With this project, we see all this innovation when it comes to energy, cleaner energy. But at the end of the day, you need some sort of buy-in, and you need industry partners that are, for lack of a better term, willing to take a risk on something that's unproven. And Utah just said no.
Yeah, you can kind of see why the utilities are a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
About taking a risk there. And, we see with investments in clean energy, the U.S. government has dumped a lot of money into a lot of different areas. They have a lot of eggs in a lot of different baskets. And I think that that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I know some people are coming out after this and saying this has been a tremendous waste of money. This is Solyndra, because everyone has to bring up Solyndra every time.
Which is ridiculous analogy here. But
I know, it's not the same.
Yeah, because they're not dead.
Right, they're not.
NuScale lives on.
Yeah, and the reality is, as this is a massive transition. There's going to be some broken eggs. It just is what it is. To me, so if you look at the future of nuclear energy, it's sort of a contentious debate amongst experts. Some people believe that it's scalable, it's clean, and it's expensive, but with scale, it will work. It's got a lot of benefits. Alternatively, you have organizations like Greenpeace, who says that nuclear power has no place in a safe, clean, sustainable future. I think, that response on nuclear is probably like a Chernobyl related, fear of seeing communities and depressed countries being exploited for something like that, right?
Yeah. Hopefully that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, I think so. So I don't know. When I read this, I saw it as, yes, a blow to nuclear energy, but certainly not the death knell of it. According to an August report by Schroders, there were 486 nuclear reactors either planned, proposed, or under construction as of July, amounting to 65.9 billion watts of electric capacity, the highest amount of electric capacity under construction in the industry since 2015. So take away 6, and there's still a lot happening here, I know the novel aspects of this was what made it so impactful. And as you said, there's still technology there and a lot of work has been put into it. I don't think that is being just chucked in the garbage.
Yeah.
So you are left with that progress there. And I think, again, the cost part gets addressed with scale, just with anything that's you can't get there till you get there.
Yeah.
So, I don't think this is going to be more than a blip. I don't think that it's going to, it's a renaissance that's happening now with all these alternative energies. And I don't think that this is just going to fade into obscurity because this one project went under. I think it's more of a setback and the industry moves forward.
No, Jeff, one thing that struck me was that I get it. It's a 10-year project, but you have to have a deal with the utilities that say, hey, we don't know when this thing's coming online, but when it does, we need some sort of promise, some sort of buy-in that when we're ready to test it, you're not going to bail on it.
But they're not going to say yes to that, David.
I mean, I think maybe it's not in the U.S., honestly. Like, it very well might be in a European nation, but I feel like if you found somebody that had a little bit more buy-in, you wouldn't arrive at this point. And all of a sudden you have Utah utilities just being like, yeah, it's a pass for us. But I mean, Jeff, I get it. When you're dealing with the potential power for 300,000 homes, that's not something you want to gamble on.
Well, I think one of the things that we need to sort of adjust our mindset when we look at all these different energy options as opposed to burning coal or natural gas, we need to look at all the different economic factors here a little bit differently, okay? So right now, when you look at how energy is produced in this country, we're still at about 40% natural gas, 20% coal. These are very easy to embrace because the plants themselves are less expensive to construct and put up. You see an ROI on them very, very quickly. And I think the other thing that people don't really think about that's different with these types of these fossil fuel plants as opposed to a renewable or a nuclear plant is the utility is just buying coal and gas. They're not mining, okay? So a lot of the costs associated with actually getting the raw materials used to make the energy are taken out of the equation. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand it's a more traditional model. You basically got the manufacturer to the distributor to the end user, okay? And I get that. But that's why we need to adjust our mindset a little bit when we look at renewable energy or we look at nuclear power, because basically you're creating that energy at the point. Mm-hmm. So not a lot of utilities are putting up wind turbines or producing their own nuclear power plants. It's a third party producing that energy, sending it to the plant and sending it to the consumer. So it's a different cost model, which is why this stuff is already expensive. Okay, there's no way around that. A nuclear plant is so much more expensive. So is a lot of the renewable energy generating infrastructure. Yeah,
turbine's not cheap, man.
Yeah, but it's different. And I think we have to embrace some of that mindset if this is what we're going to do. Okay, if we're all on board with the fact that we need to reduce fossil fuel, okay? Because it's bad for the environment, all this other stuff, we need to take into effect, yes, it's going to cost more, but there's also been a number of studies that talk about the health impacts in terms of having cleaner, more sustainable energy sources, like nuclear. Yeah. The other thing I think we need to look at is the application. We want to take these sort of miniaturized nuclear plants and put them out into a household environment and into a community environment. The reality is maybe you start in an industrial park. Maybe you start at some of these other areas where we know they're super energy intensive. Yeah. They're also, because they're so energy intensive, the environmental benefits are offset by that. So in other words, when we talk about EV batteries, we're talking about plugging in EV vehicles. When we talk about producing hydrogen vehicle batteries. One of the major deterrents is the manufacturing process produces all of these bad chemicals into the air. Well, we've got a sustainable energy source here with these miniaturized nuclear plants. Maybe we can hook something up there so that it helps mitigate some of those things that make producing those other types of products less desirable because of the output, because of the waste. Yeah. And when we can try to figure in some of those economies of scale, all of a sudden this might become a lot more palatable for people to try out and implement. So I think it's just adjusting the mindset a little bit to find a different type of ROI, because this is the way we're moving here. We're not building more coal plants.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really interesting point, Jeff. I mean, there's still a lot of interest for, quote, small nuclear power. And I like the idea of almost designing a new industrial park around this. But with manufacturers, we always talk about the cost of downtime. There has to be some sort of like backup, you know.
But that's where some of these subsidies that we're seeing for manufacturing coming into play, potentially, okay? Yeah. I'm not going to say I've got this huge plan here all scoped out, but we've got a lot of LEED certification things. We've got a lot of incentives that go into it. Was it the Lego plant that they're building? It was in the Southeast.
Oh, yeah.
Got a ton of money from the state because of the wind turbines and all the renewable stuff. Maybe offer the same type of benefit here, and you've got it going to a collection of potentially established manufacturers, not necessarily to lure them into a place or a location or geography, but you're here. let's try this out
Mm-hmm.
and subsidize it that way to help it grow. Because the more of this we do, the more we scale up, those costs in theory should come down. Plus the ROI on the actual facility over time becomes much, much better because you avoided that huge initial investment cost.
Well, as I mentioned, the project is dead, but new scale isn't, you know?
Nice try.
No. It's, I mean, that was what I took away from it, was that like, okay, the company's still around.
Yeah.
And so there is the opportunity to potentially bring this in more of an industrial area. The company is going to continue working with domestic and international customers to try and bring this technology to market. So it's still viable, you know.
Absolutely.
The design was certified by federal regulators as a 50 megawatt advanced light water small modular nuclear reactor, and I'm just going to say that with the confidence as though I know what that means. The company is currently seeking certification for an upgraded 77 megawatt design, which I don't know. I kind of went back and forth on where I was like, maybe prove the 50 megawatt one.
Yeah.
And then, but I mean, I get it. You know, hey, if you can go 77, all right. John Dearden, who is watching us live, says makes the energy system much less vulnerable with mini nuclear plants.
That's a great point.
That is a great point, John. And the money isn't always the problem. Like, do you think maybe it was here a little bit though? Because you talked about maybe they scaled up too fast. Yeah.
What if they would have taken a little bit less money and started smaller?
Well,
you know,
but it's over. So it was like the energy department it was 3 different presidents provided more than $600 million since 2014 to support like the design, licensing, and siting of this. So in this, I mean, that's a lot of money, but it's still over a long period of time. I mean, you're right. Maybe if it was drips and drabs, it would have been a little bit more methodical. But that's one thing that stood out to me is that, you know, the money's not always the problem. You know, I said it before, but at the end of the day, you need buy-in. And if you don't have it, you don't have a project. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Fake safety checks, barefoot workers at plant blamed for contaminated eye drops. Trigger warning, this one is gross. The FDA recently issued an alert that says more than 24 over-the-counter eye drop products posed potential risk to consumers because they weren't sterile. The 26 products were being sold at major retailers, including Target, Rite Aid, Walmart, and CVS. Regulators say that applying these eye drops with potential bacterial contamination via the eye means they bypass some of your body's natural defenses. You could be blinded or worse. Several days after the FDA's alert, more information surfaced about the manufacturer. According to Bloomberg, the eye drops were linked to a factory in Mumbai called Kilich Healthcare India. A federal inspection at the facility found some rather shockingly unsanitary conditions, like claims that workers were seen barefoot, and the plant was falsifying test results to make it look like these drops were safe to use. According to the agency, it has not yet received reports of adverse effects, but consumers should be on high alert. Earlier this year, non-sterile eye drops produced at another factory in India allegedly caused dozens of U.S. infections. In some cases, patients were blinded and some even died. Anna, I mean, let's just start at the base level here. You gotta wear shoes to work. I mean, there are so many things to this story. I feel like this week's podcast is filled with stories with layers. You know, we got a lot of onions here. But this astonishes me, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but like when it comes to things that the FDA can actually do in this situation, it's rather frustrating when they uncover such rather startling conditions at a supplier of what people should think are safe, sterile, over-the-counter medical treatments.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was so alarming considering that this is like the most benign of products that could be deadly and kill you, and I will never use eye drops again after this.
True. Well, on the other side of that, my wife uses eye drops like 3 times a day. And I was just like, hey, you got to throw them all out and probably never use them again. Sorry.
Well, right. I know. And you have no way of knowing that they're compromised. It's basically an odorless, clear liquid.
Yeah.
With a safety seal on it, you know, like you would. And I think the problem, too, is they were branded with very trusted retailers' names, like Target's Up and Up private label was one of them. CVS, as you mentioned, Walmart, carrying these product lines. And I think the alarming thing about private labels, typically not a problem, but as a consumer, the trust that you're placing there is not in the manufacturer. It's the trust is in the retailer.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point, yeah.
And your retailer that you trust so much because you go to Target once a week or whatever, they have, they're not the ones that are putting these quality control processes in place. Although they should be. Mm-hmm. Their name's on it. And I think in the eyes of the law, they are considered the manufacturer, whether or not they do that. So you can't blame anyone for buying the products. They have no idea. It's often, a faceless corporation that sells everything to us. People don't know country of origin. This happens a lot. We place a tremendous amount of trust in the global economy to do us right by manufacturing. And that's clearly not taking place here. So the Reuters report identified incidents of workers in this plant combing their hair near critical equipment. This is a sterile process. There should be a clean room.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, so I mean, it's not that they didn't even have like a cap on.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose if they don't have shoes, cap and gown are kind of out of the question. Huh?
Right. No shoes, combing their hair. I think like that's enough information to speak to the general culture of this plant. Which is absolutely negligent at best. But the fact that they were, you mentioned falsifying information. I think what was reported by Reuters was that they were changing the dates of manufacture on some of the products to indicate that they were made, more recently than they were or whatever. So that is willful, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I hope that the retailers in this case learned a valuable lesson here, which is that these facility visits need to be taken place more regularly,
right?
Perhaps without notice. If you're Target, obviously you can't always pinpoint falsified records at first glance, but you can identify a culture of negligence if you walk into that factory and people aren't wearing shoes.
Well, so was it one of the retailers that uncovered it, or was it? I thought it was an FDA investigation.
It was, but it was a foreign. FDA investigation of a foreign plant.
Okay, so you're saying that the retailers...
If it's their private label product, it is their responsibility to implement those quality control processes. They should have boots on the ground over there and finding out what's happening at those plants. There's no excuse for somebody like Target to say, we didn't know what was happening there.
Yeah. No, it's, I had an interview with a person who manufactures pre-rolls paper for the cannabis industry. He's doing just paper, right? He goes to the factory in India like once a month, just to check it out to make sure he has a quality product. And so when it comes to something like eye drops, I can't believe that Target, Walmart, any of them, they could all get together and be like, hey, you know what? We're all sourcing from these guys. How about we just split it up? We send somebody over there quarterly, just to make sure they're not combing their hair into the solution.
Right. And if you feel like at any point someone could come in and inspect you, you're not going to go to work without your shoes on. But that's clearly not happening here because there's this culture where anything goes.
Yeah. Jeff, any jobs, period, that you can go to without shoes on? Like a surf instructor? Yoga teacher?
Yeah, maybe.
Yogi? No,
but you're still going to wear shoes there at some point. I guess you just kick them off,
Yeah,
it's such a chill environment.
Maybe some sort of croc. No, this one just... I was wondering if you're going to talk about the regulatory aspect of this, because one thing that stood out to me was that when it says the FDA has little power to force a drug maker to recall its products, but, it can ban the factory from sending more eye drops into the U.S., which just seems crazy to me. Like, we can't trigger a recall, but we can stop them from coming.
Because it's in India.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big thing. So did I read this correctly? They have since issued a voluntary recall.
So the all of the brands that produce these issued recalls. So
all the stores.
Right. The factory, as far as I know, the factory did not issue a recall, but all of the consumer facing brands did so. So they're not going to be available.
Yeah, it was 2 days after the inspection. The FDA asked this company to recall its products, and so far it hasn't done so.
Okay. So what I thought was interesting here is it really also demonstrates the proliferation of contract manufacturers throughout pharmaceuticals. Okay. It continues to expand here in the U.S. especially, but now we're seeing it overseas. And the reason that they're going to a country like India is obviously for cost reasons. But you guys nailed it. I mean, there is absolutely no reason. There's no difference in checking this out as a contract manufacturer as you would if you're making, Target branded pizzas, you're going to check out who's making the cheese, right?
Yeah.
Who's putting it on there. This is another critical part of your supply chain. And yeah, you need to have feet on the ground to make sure everything is right. And the fact that it wasn't, if you are, borrowing from the food sector, there is the more stringent auditing comes from a company like Kraft or what's another big one? Heinz or whomever. They're going to go into these facilities if they're sourcing tomato sauce or cheese or whatever you're talking about that's going to be a part of their product. They're going to be going there. And what I've heard is those audits and those standards are higher than the FDA or OSHA or any place else. Okay. So why that didn't follow suit here can only be attributed to the fact that it was overseas. And it's more difficult logistically. But it does not in any way, shape, or form give these retailers a pass. And they can absolutely be sued, just like you would a manufacturer in this instance. If they're putting out a product that has liabilities associated with it, they can definitely go to court and get into a lot of trouble, especially if you're looking at people being injured and harmed to this extent. I mean, we're talking about people potentially dying over having this stuff exposed into their body. So go ahead. I'm sorry. The one positive takeaway I would say from this is we always preach about supply chain visibility and being able to track and trace things back to the place of origin to understand what happened and why. That worked here. I think there is something to be said there for, at a minimum, that all that stuff when we talk about barcodes and scanning and inventory management, it came to fruition here that we could track it back exactly to this facility and what the problem was. So there is at least that positive takeaway in some way.
I wonder what either happened at this facility or how they even won the contract in general. Like at some point you would assume they were vetted to win the contract to produce these eye drops. So what happened that it got to the point of these unsanitary conditions, or were they never toured? Did they never go and see who they were actually partnering with? Anna, one thing I'm curious about, does this kind of shake your faith in generic or store branded products in general?
No, because I think, knowing what we do about manufacturing, so many of these operations, are side by side producing private label products as branded products that you would know. There's almost no distinction in many cases between some of those foods, some of those products. It did shake my faith in eye drops. It really did. Yeah. I don't think I'm one for eye drops from this point forward, but.
Understood. Like I'm out of the eye drop game. And John says another career path that you can take without wearing shoes to work is a lifeguard. It was just right there. How'd I miss it?
There you go.
All right. Well, our most popular story this week. The Air Force's new nuclear stealth bomber, the B-21 Raider, takes its first test flight. And I'm pretty sure this one was number one just because of that photo. Whew. On Friday, the B-21 Raider took its first test flight. The Raider flew in Palmdale, California, where Northrop Grumman has been testing and developing the craft. The Air Force is planning to build 100 of the warplanes, which have a flying wing shape much like the B-2 Spirit, but will incorporate advanced materials, propulsion, and stealth technology to make them more survivable in a future conflict. The plane is planned to be produced in variants that can either have pilots or be autonomous. Testing is an obviously critical step, but the futuristic warplane has never been closer to becoming the nation's next nuclear weapons stealth bomber. Anna, your thoughts on the advancement of the B-21 and, we were talking about cost with that nuclear project. I have to imagine that, they're racking up on this one as well.
It's going to be a hefty bill.
Yeah?
Yep.
Is it like just one check at the end? Like payable on delivery?
Yeah. Is there some kind of a deposit? I
don't know.
Yeah, I thought this was funny that this was the most popular story of the week because it's like 3 lines long.
I know, it is.
Almost
it's just
no information.
It is. It wasn't the most popular story of the week. It was the most popular photo of the week because when it comes to government released photos, normally just low marks, right?
Yeah.
And then you see this one and you're like, oh, okay. someone there gets it and they listen to him.
Yeah, the lighting is like very Apple. Like,
Oh yeah, it's very dramatic.
yeah, very dramatic. The AP didn't have a lot on this, but Reuters did have a little bit more, which I dug up. So according to Reuters report, the development of this plane was done under very strict security. So the Air Force leaders didn't actually publicize the B-21's first flight. This was sort of supposed to be done kind of on the sly. But according to Reuters, about 36 aviation enthusiasts and amateur photographers gathered around Plant 42 on Friday, hoping to see the bomber take to the skies. So then I'm wondering, like, did they just go there every day?
Yeah, just like, hey, this thing might take off sometime if you want to be here.
So Reuters' source was this witness that was on the ground to see this take place. So the aircraft is projected to cost approximately $550 million a piece. Wait for it. This is in 2010 dollars. So about $750 million a piece in today's inflation-adjusted dollars. However,
one small nuclear project. That's all, each.
However, this according to Reuters, the Air Force has kept other price information classified, quote, which makes validating the proposed cost difficult, the Congressional Research Service said. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, you don't say.
So the Air Force plans to buy at least 100 of the planes and begin to replace B-1s and B-2s. B-1s cost about $60,000 per hour to operate, and the B-2 costs about $65,000 per hour. This is according to the Pentagon. So what do you think per hour this bad boy costs to operate?
Well, let's see. If that's the B-1 and the B-2, the B-21 has to be,
Yeah,
$150,000.
I don't know. I just... Like,
oh, you don't know?
No, they don't.
David, they've only flown it once.
Yeah,
there has to be some sort of estimate.
If you want to know more about it, you should start hanging around by Plant 42.
Yeah, just I'm gonna work remotely from Plant 42.
From Plant 42,
good signal over there.
I kind of want to write a novel about like these 36 people and their relationships. They probably just like they probably know each other pretty well.
Yeah, this little commune.
Yeah.
Reporters.
You think there's an internal power struggle?
There might be. Who gets to hold the camera? Who gets to press the button?
Some trysts.
Anyway, I just, just like other military programs, like this one is encountered some delays to date. The aforementioned inflated costs. I realize that, with military technology, some of this is just posturing. It's like, we have this, so don't mess with us kind of thing. We all know that. But man, it is expensive. And, what is the limit was kind of what I took from this, because at some point, I don't know. Are we forever just going to shake our heads and just be like, that's what it costs, I guess. Like, it is what it is. It just $750 million times 100.
Yeah.
Oof.
I'll get into the public sentiment a little bit to kind of look into that a little bit more as to what people are willing to swallow when it comes to defense spending. John, who thinks this should just be priced at a lots of zeros. Jeff, he's not wrong, but you often talk about how we have to keep pace with other militaries around the globe. And is this just the cost of doing business to make sure we remain competitive?
Yes.
All right. There we go. Close it up.
Cost.
Yep.
Just to give you a little more perspective, when you look at the B-2, that was rumored to be almost a $2 billion plane. Per. Somewhere between what we're paying now, $750 and $2 billion per plane. Now, to help quell some of your concerns, Anna, they were going to order 100 of those, 130 of them, I think. They ordered 32. So,
good to know.
we may be coming down a little bit.
This is supposed to be able to withstand a lot of abuse, I think. So maybe you just drive it for longer, as they say.
Yeah.
Autonomous capabilities, so you don't, have to deal with pilots beating stuff up, taking it too fast around the corners.
Yeah. Yeah. Come on, Maverick.
Yeah. So, it is interesting when you look at where this was and how much more expensive it's going to be. The other thing is with the B-2, it took them 4 years from that first flight to the time the first delivery was made. Okay. So we are in the infancy here, which means the cost could also grow exponentially. I do think there is a lot of, you can call it posturing, whatever you want to refer to it as. Right now, there's two countries in particular that this is all focused on when you look at Russia and China. Mm-hmm. Russia's got their hands full right now, but China, and I think, we mentioned it a little bit before, from a defense perspective, they are in they're at least in a contemplative pause, and when it comes to future developments, because some of those tariffs that have been put in place, that were put in place by Trump and have now been reinforced by Biden in terms of some of the technology that is allowed to be sold over there, is having an impact. I think they are slowing down. So the fact that we are moving forward with something that is being touted for its stealth, in terms of not being able to pick it up on radar, can launch both conventional and nuclear weapons. And it's also got, and they haven't gone into a ton of detail, but a lot of cybersecurity type tools in there in terms of allowing people to maybe hack closer to, if you're not being picked up on radar, you can get closer to the enemy in terms of infiltrating their networks and things like that on the battlefield. So there's a lot of different parts, moving pieces of this. The price is obviously very expensive. I can't combat that, but it's I do feel like there's almost, when it comes to the public sentiment about this, and I don't have any numbers to back this up, but it's got to feel, or at least it does to me, like that's just white noise at this point. Like, it's such an unreal number when you hear $750 million. Who can really contemplate that?
Yeah.
But we've been sensitized to all these big numbers in terms of what stuff costs for the military, that it's just like, okay.
Well, for the government in general. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you on that for sure. People don't, it's hard to I don't know, contextualize that in any way.
Do you want to be the one who says, well, what's the ROI on that? Well, what's the ROI on never starting a war?
Whoa, Jeff.
You know, those are the types of responses you're going to get.
You're like doing.
He said that with like some cold eyes.
Yeah.
Like just staring, just like, what's the ROI at preventing a war?
And it's about a war that was never fought.
He is serious. Well, because there was not a lot to this story, that's where I went, I was just like, so we hear these huge numbers, and where does the public stand when it comes to defense spending? Just because, we've come in and out of conflicts throughout our lifetime, and it seems like whenever they happen, there's a lot of blowback in terms of what's being spent, but a lot of people just saying like, hey, that's what you got to do. So according to Gallup, the public's views over defense spending has remained somewhat consistent over the years. As of February of this year, 26% of Americans think we still spend too little on defense. That one shocked me a little bit, where I was just like, okay, everyone's got to universally understand that it's a lot. 37% of people believe it's just the right amount. We're threading the needle. Like, what? You know what? It's perfect.
Yeah. Do you know what the number is, though?
No.
I think it's about right.
Yeah. I think it's a lot,
I feel safe.
but I think it's about right. That's what it probably comes down to, where if they feel safe right now, it's perfect.
You're
if they
right.
don't feel safe, it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
If they feel too safe, I mean, we got a little police statey a while back. And 35% do think it's too much. And now that figure, the 35% that think we're spending too much on defense spending, that's the highest it's been since 2014. And again, we're talking about like within, 5 to 10%. It's been kind of there since, what was it? Okay, as recently as February 2020, 50% of Americans thought defense spending was about right. So
50?
Yeah, 50% of people in February 2020 thought defense spending was just right. And so, we've seen a little bit of shift, but overall it's been pretty consistent. 44% of Americans feel that our national defense isn't strong enough. So that was something that those didn't really line up to me, where 26% think we're spending too little, but 44% feel that our national defense isn't strong enough. Well, so how do you want to get it there? It's going to take money, like just hugs and rainbows.
Well, do you think people necessarily equate defense spending with what are some of the larger threats now, which are like cybersecurity type threats or, intelligence type concerns that we have trying to figure out these things before they happen? I don't know if it necessarily means like everyone wants more tanks.
Yeah, I guess that doesn't translate to money because they're not seeing like hard costs. But I mean, for us, I guess, because we're so close to it and we know, especially with the cybersecurity work that Jeff has been doing, we realize how, let's say, cost intensive that can be to get it right. So, I mean, that's a really good point that people don't necessarily see current threats like, as, you can't take down a cybersecurity threat with a tank.
Right. Or maybe that's not the military budget that they're talking about,
Yeah. But no, these Gallup numbers and kind of looking at them in historical context was kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Worth checking out. All right. Before we move into, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe, didn't do great on the website. It's probably didn't do great at all, but still stand to make it a big impact on the industry going forward. We have another word from Oracle NetSuite. One of the long-lasting impacts of COVID-19 and the global pandemic it created has been the priority now being placed on long-term enterprise-wide planning. So join me and Jeff. We're going to talk about Oracle NetSuite's latest white paper. Well, we're not going to. We already did, and then we filmed it, and now
awesome.
It's in a perfect little package for you guys to download. In the ultimate guide to scenario planning, strategies and steps to de-risk your organization. There is a link in the body copy. There is a link in the chat. Download it and let us know what you think. All right, let's move on to In Case You Missed It. Again, stories, not doing the numbers, but could impact the industry going forward. I'll go first this week if you guys are cool with it. And if not, I'm still just going to fire through, so just interrupt me.
Just go, yeah.
Yeah. I picked a story about an autonomous electric truck now working full-time at GE Appliances. I'm going to, what?
That's just such a funny headline because I'm picturing like, Mom, I got my first job.
Yeah. This autonomous truck, like with its lunch pail heading to work, just like.
Got a locker.
Yeah, finally signed on. I was surprised this one didn't do better because, I mean, everyone in the industry is dealing with logistical headaches. Mm-hmm. And this is a real chance to solve some of those problems. So this week, a pilot project at GE Appliances was promoted to a full-time deployment. Enride's autonomous EV is now transporting goods in Selmer, Tennessee from GE Appliances factory to its warehouse. The journey is only about 3.25 miles, 3/4 of a mile. And the vehicle, the Enride Gen 2, has a range of about 112 miles. This news is an important step in the integration of autonomous transportation supporting full-time commercial flows. I think the reason I chose this story was obvious because, it was, they kind of slow rolled it. They started with a pilot project at their headquarters. They rolled it out to a smaller project behind, at their facility. And now it was also the first one to get like NHTSA approval. So everything is working right for this project. And I mean, this is doing like up to 7 journeys a day. It's working. We've talked about autonomous trucks a lot and some of the hiccups that we've seen, as to where they can kind of get close. They pull up to the gate and then a driver needs to kind of bring them in. But this is like full on autonomy. So I think it's obvious as to why I picked this story. This is the future of logistics, and you can see it right now in Selmer, Tennessee. Anna, what do you think about this story?
I thought it was cool. We've talked a lot in the past about how certain new technologies, they find a place in the industrial environment before they do in a consumer or commercial application. So something like this, I think, is perfect because they say that the biggest challenge with engineering autonomous vehicles is trying to account for those unknowns, which are much more prevalent on, say, a busy downtown street than you would find on this like straight shot 3/4 of a mile transit route, which I think is the perfect place to put these into play. And as we've talked about in the past, as people become more familiar with these, if they see them more, they see them working effectively, they will see how they can apply to their businesses in other ways.
And they are recognizable. I will just, shout out to the design team at Enride because it's also a cool looking vehicle.
Yeah.
Jeff, the other reason I chose this story was because this vehicle is part of a larger interoperability project that's happening in Selmer. GE Appliances, which is a hair company, not to be confused with a GE company. They also partnered with TaskWatch and Slip Robotics. So this TaskWatch AI cameras trigger the control board to raise and lower the dock doors and dock plate and lock the Enride autonomous vehicle into place. That tells an all-electric Slip bot from Slip Robotics that autonomously loads and unloads the vehicle, reducing loading times by 80%. And they're also working with Ericsson, who's providing a private network to ensure reliable communication between the vehicle and a remote operator on site, which I think, peace of mind operator on site. All of this is part of an effort to create an automated logistics workflow or flow designed to improve employee ergonomics and safety around loading docks that have been historically unsafe.
Yeah. I think you just mentioned the biggest thing, safety, especially on those docks. I mean, that's huge. We work with a lot of companies that have designed products just to address those concerns. So that's great to see. I think what's interesting here too is, Enride is very transparent in terms of all the people they're working with. A lot of times when we talk about these companies and they discuss the different integrations, whether it be the wireless technology that Ericsson is providing or some of the robotics, they're a little tight-lipped about that. I think the fact that they're more transparent about it not only shows their confidence in it, the reliability in it, but it's also, we talk about the thing that leads to the thing.
Oh, you did!
This is helping other companies potentially offer these types of solutions as well. And that's where we want to get. Yeah. We want to get to the fact where these are safer, more reliable, more trustworthy, cut costs, all of those things. And Enride's putting it in place here, but we've seen other autonomous trucking companies also play around with this stuff. I think there's some routes in Texas that people have been playing with, in the Southwest as well. The companies that come to mind, I think it's Waymo and Too Simple are a couple that have also kind of been at the forefront of this. So it's encouraging to see, and I look forward to the fact that how this can simplify supply chain operations. It can address a lot of those issues. We talk about trucker shortages, driver shortages. So it just checks a lot of boxes. So this was cool. I was surprised too that this did not perform better, but I think the reason why is it worked.
True.
Nothing bad happened here.
Yeah.
So
I mean, each one of those stories, be Slip Robotics, the TaskWatch camera, or Ericsson, like those could have been individual stories on their own. Yeah. And I do recommend you got to check out the SlipBot because it is just crazy how that thing works, loading and unloading trucks. All right, Anna, what is your in case you missed it this week?
All right, so I have a robot story also.
Nice.
Yeah, it's about Amazon debuting its security robot named Astro for Business. So,
of course it is.
Yeah. Amazon has unveiled its new Astro for Business, a security solution for small and medium-sized businesses that combines robotics, smart security, and AI. Customers can basically tailor this little bot with subscriptions, including Ring Protect Pro, Astro Secure, which is a new subscription offering with advanced business security features like smart alerts, custom patrol routes, and scheduled patrols. Astro can also send customers smart alerts when it hears the sound of smoke and carbon monoxide alarms or glass breaking. It can be synced with your Ring alarm, so it can move autonomously to investigate any triggered sensors. So like this little buddy robot with his like magnifying glass and just
I like your mannerisms on that. You can tell Anna's been reading a lot of books to children. She's got
he's just gonna roll over there and he's gonna investigate. So Amazon has added a bunch of privacy controls to Astro, assuming, I think based on the blowback probably that they received on Ring. So this includes ability to turn off certain features, functions, limit areas, prohibiting the device from storing certain content for long periods of time. This bot starts around $2,400, which is a lot cheaper than a human security guard, but also a lot easier to kick. To me, it's an interesting approach when you consider that security guard is probably a job that's hard to fill right now. Yeah. If you look at the economy and trends there and challenges with hiring. Yet, I don't know. And looking at this thing, it seems like it doesn't do a lot more than like existing sensor or camera-based security systems already do, besides the fact that it's autonomous. I'm curious to know if this is much more of a deterrent than your traditional, doorbell cam. Like the safety alerts are cool, but that stuff is everywhere and it's a lot cheaper. This is a pretty expensive price point. So I'm still trying to figure out what, maybe it's patrolling like the interior of a facility. Yeah. And that's going to be helpful. I don't see these working outdoors. I don't know if this is going to work for Amazon or not. I would like to see this play out a little bit because it does seem like it's pretty redundant with a lot of stuff that's already out there, the sensors and things like that. And, a lot of plants already have their own security systems. So we'll see.
I mean, is it that you can get away with less cameras? Or no, because it only works if you have cameras to pick something up and then it can observe and report, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know.
And it patrols too. So the device has cameras and...
Is it just like the biggest deterrence is that you can put that shield sign out front of the office that says like, Astro on patrol, so watch out.
Yeah, I think that you're really going to get a lot out of putting that sign up.
Well, it's like, how 90% of the homes that have that little shield in front of it, like, probably don't actually have that security system.
Not true, David. Everyone who has one has it.
Oh, gotcha. Jeff, one thing that I took away from this story was that when they named it Astro and other things like Optimus, is that, it's okay to be a man-child in the current business landscape. Mm-hmm. It's just like, you know what? Let's name it after the Jetsons dog. And to that, I applaud it. Great work. Continue.
You're sold just on the name.
Continue pulling from 80s cartoons with your high-tech solutions, and I will be all in.
Once again, David kisses up to our eventual robotic overlords.
No, this isn't an overlord. This is our pet. This is our AI pet.
This is the start.
So tiny.
When I read this, I got to be honest, it felt like the doorbell turned up to 11. It's kind of what it felt like to me. It's on wheels. It's patrolling around. I guess it can collect a lot of information. I guess I could definitely see this in the Indiana Jones warehouse, where they got the boxes on boxes on boxes, maybe storming around. As far as the impact it could have going forward, maybe it is a cost-effective solution. Again, if you've got assets that you want to make sure nobody's messing with, but I don't know, maybe they're more commodity type situations. I think if it's still a high valuable asset and you need security in place, this may not be the best fit. Mm-hmm. But as far as a deterrent, yeah, I think if somebody's looking for a target of opportunity, this would probably make them look the other way. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I was actually thinking it was going to be worth more or priced higher than $2,400.
Yeah, no, that is. I got to see if there's a logo for this Astro for Business now. I was hoping it was like some sort of robotic paw, robot paw print.
It's not a dog.
It's a dog.
It's not a dog.
It's got wheels, David.
Jeff, what is in case you missed it this week?
This is maybe the most paradigm shifting, social barrier breaking story potentially that we've had on this podcast.
Whoa.
All right.
And it's about food. DiGiorno is unveiling a Thanksgiving pizza. Because, David, according to the article, 68% of Americans dislike a classic Thanksgiving dish, but they eat it anyway out of tradition.
What?
This year, DiGiorno is giving people a chance to gobble up a unique take on the holidays' most iconic dishes in one oven-ready pie. It's crafted by the culinary masterminds at DiGiorno, and it delivers all your Thanksgiving favorites in one bite. It features classic turkey, creamy gravy sauce, diced sweet potatoes, colorful green beans and cranberries, and then rich mozzarella and cheddar cheese, plus a crispy onion topping, all loaded up on a thick and chewy Detroit-style crust. I am in.
Oh, yeah. I'm all in on this. The only thing is that it's made by DiGiorno. It's going to be a frozen pizza, whereas we have a local pizzeria in town, Ian's, that makes a Thanksgiving pizza that is second to none. It is so good. But, okay, so one point. You said it, right? You said it. 68% of Americans dislike one of the classic Thanksgiving dishes. So DiGiorno's response was, put them all on a pie and force them to eat it anyway.
That's what I was wondering. Like, what are the traditional ones like that you guys don't like that everybody's like, how, what?
Yeah.
You don't have that on your plate? Because for me, I have to admit, I make a different type of stuffing because I don't like the traditional like crouton-based stuffing.
What is a different type of stuffing?
I use cornbread.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that sounds good.
Fine.
It's actually really good.
Yeah.
All right.
But that isn't a traditional.
Bring it in and we'll try it.
Yeah. Oh, I would love to try this.
All right.
But I
You
mean,
can do that. I mean, just come on over.
Yeah. I don't have plans.
Got like a 25-pound turkey for 5 people.
That's fantastic. No, I guess for me, it's the cranberry sauce. But I never liked cranberry sauce.
You are consistent there. I mean, you don't like fruit pies.
Yeah.
So
but I had the cranberry sauce on the Thanksgiving pie at Ian's, and I was like, this is great because it's just that little bit of sweet with the salty, and I'm in. I'm going to have this.
So with cranberries, Anna, do you do the one that comes out of the can? Just like plops out, or
no? My mom has full editorial control over Thanksgiving still, and she does like a scratch cranberry sauce.
My mother-in-law does too,
and it's good.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Producer Alex says it's sweet potatoes.
Yeah, sweet potatoes ruin everything, and I will counter that with if it's just a baked sweet potato, you're fine. Whatever monster started putting marshmallows in there. Yeah. I don't understand.
Not a fan of that. Just a little butter. little butter in the sweet potatoes, you're good to go.
That's fine too, but like it naturally caramelizes after you roast it. I don't get it.
So one follow-up note with this pizza, it's only available online.
Oh, I thought the follow-up was going to be like, it's here right now.
I tried. But it's currently sold out. The next available offering is November 22nd. So you can try again, but they've got limited numbers. They're only available online. So.
The 22nd? I got time.
Gross, man.
What is that? All right, Wednesday. Between this and what is it? Purdue's chicken feed. I got some real fun snacks for the holidays. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, before we move on to our final thought, we have the contest. The contest is back. So just a reminder that our new giveaway comes from our friends at Sellers. Each winner receives a Sellers tumbler, a white rags box, and a shop towels box. Last week we asked, what is the worst spill or mess that you have ever had to clean up at work? And John, I'm sorry, you came in second. Colin came in first. Without getting into too many details, actually I got a ton of details, so hold on to your hats. He says the biggest mess I was involved in was at an engine manufacturing plant. We tested 5,000 horsepower natural gas engines that were used in the gas and oil industry in the 1990s. In our hookup and test, we used a mercury manometer to measure the back pressure on the exhaust system. Wouldn't you know it, but somebody hooked up the tubing to the manometer backwards. Oof. And when the engine was fired up, all the mercury shot up to the atmosphere side and almost hit the roof. He says, it is amazing how mercury scatters when it hits the floor. Oof. The cleanup involved white suits and several shop vacuums. It took several days. He says that he is sure the shop vacs and the suits are still in the 4 55-gallon drums they shipped to the disposal firm. So, Colin, for your trouble, you will receive a Sellers tumbler, white rags box, and shop towels box. We're going to reach out to make sure we get your address. And we get to do it again this week. And I feel like, these are rags, so I feel like we keep it messy, right? We keep the giveaway messy. All right. So this week, we want to know who has the messiest desk, shop, job site, whatever work-related workspace you have. Send us a photo if you can. Each winner is going to receive... It's not messy.
Of the people on this panel, who do you think has the messiest desk?
Clearly Anna. She's a hoarder. That's what it is. After I clean my desk, we'll make sure we ship out the Sellers tumbler to Colin. So who that listens to the Today in Manufacturing podcast has the messiest desk, shop, job site? Send us a photo at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com. Each winner is going to receive a Sellers tumbler, a white rags box, and a shop towels box. Just a reminder that founded in 1985 and headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Sellers is a leading manufacturer of shop towels, multi-use disposable wipers, towel and tissue, and absorbent products. Sellers products, which are sold under the Toolbox, Clean Task, and Mayfair brands, are made from recycled and renewable materials, are high performance and good for the environment. Sellers is committed to using sustainable practices in all business areas while serving people, customers, and the planet. Jeff, any messy work sites or non-panel related desks stand out? And it can't just be like my old desk.
No, I mean, the first thing I thought about was, I think I've told that story about the bird seed at Shopco.
Oh, yeah.
That was definitely the biggest mess that we had to clean up. But that was all, shop vac picking up stuff. Yeah. As far as with rags and stuff, I mean, I'd probably go back to like when the kids were painting, and that was always an adventure.
Yeah. So. Anna, I mean, you're not a messy desk person. What is the messiest you will allow your desk to get before there has to be a cleansing?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it gets really dusty over like break and stuff. So
it's like when I'm not using it over our holiday break, it gets a little dusty.
It does get dusty. Sometimes I get some papers, a few too many papers on my desk, and then I need to.
That is unfortunate. I don't think you're going to win the Sellers tumbler.
Yeah. I had receipts from being on the road driving me nuts all week.
Yep. Oh, like when a lanyard sits for like a week and it's like, oh, it's time for this to go in the trash.
I will say I do clean my desk just enough because if you don't have enough desk space, the cleaning service won't even wipe it down. So I try to make sure to have like, I don't know what the ratio is, like 60% of your desk, and then they'll give it a shot.
There is no way you have that much
space
on your desk.
Not right now. I got until...
The impressive thing though is you know where everything is on that desk. Yeah. Just like with the, I don't know, 2,000 tabs you have open at all times on your computer.
I got it down to 85 yesterday.
Oh.
It's okay.
That would just give me an ulcer.
I was at 117. All right, well, let's get into our final thoughts. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
It's almost Thanksgiving, which is my favorite holiday. I'm really looking forward to it. And my daughter Lola, the other day, she said she was looking forward to it and I said, what's your favorite thing about Thanksgiving? Or what are you looking forward to most about Thanksgiving week? And she said the food, which I was like, yes, because we're going to put up our Christmas tree. Like they're going to see their cousins, like all this cool stuff. But she was like, yeah, like I'm just going to kick it on the couch. I'm going to eat a whole bunch. And like, then we're going to watch The Grinch. And yeah, so looking forward to that. And my take on the Thanksgiving food thing is obviously turkey is not my thing.
Yeah.
But I do like the green bean with like the crispy onion stuff on. I know that's like a very controversial dish, but I'm just going to say I am pro that.
People don't like that?
It's delicious.
Tons of people don't like it.
Yeah, a lot of people
really?
Hate it.
Yeah.
Green bean casserole, that's it.
So we're entering the season shortly after Thanksgiving where I just buy containers of the like crispy fried onions and like test my stomach with just like, you know what? These are better than chips. And then I eat like 3 of them and I'm just like, oh, that's right. You're killing yourself. They got to go.
You got to cook those a little.
No. Just right out of that jar.
No.
I'm going to have it tonight. And just a programming note that we're recording Wednesday early for next week's podcast. So if you want to join us live on YouTube, it'll be Wednesday morning before the holiday.
We're going to be super squirrely too. So
yeah,
it'll be a good one.
We'll be ready to go. Just like, I mean, actually.
This desk will be a mess. Be crazy.
Of DiGiorno pies. My final thought is just this weekend we're taking off and we're headed to Holland, Michigan to visit my grandmother, my Grandma Jo. And we haven't seen her in like 5 years. She was like, I haven't met your kid. I'm like, oh, you haven't met Caden? She's like, oh, I haven't met both of your kids. And, we're coming up around the holidays. And it was just a reminder to me that you never should let that amount of time pass before you see any family. And so I just encourage you, if there's anyone in your life that you haven't seen in a while, and maybe it's because of distance or maybe it's because of emotional distance, try to reach out and see them, just because, you know what, my soul feels a little bit more whole just even thinking about seeing her. So I can't wait to go, despite the drive with children.
That is a haul.
But we'll be all right. I'm sure they're going to be on their best behavior.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
Well, this weekend I'll continue my tour of small town community theater. Or not community theater, but so last Friday we had the Middleton High School theater production. And then this Friday, actually going up to Ripon College to see their theater production, which for me, I'm going to be honest, I appreciate all the effort, but it's just buying in sometimes is tough.
What? You don't feel the emotional connection?
I struggle with, I'm good with the plays. Yeah. The musicals are tough for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. They're just so happy or sad. They burst into song.
You should just do a musical to get over that. Like, I think that's what you need to do.
Like I said, it's kind of like watching soccer for me. I appreciate what is going on here. Yeah. I admit they're great athletes and they're doing, but I just cannot get into the game. It's the same thing with musicals. Like I appreciate everything that's going on. I just struggle. My kids know this. It's nothing new.
I mean, you make the effort. You're there. What do you know what the show is?
In Ripon, I can't remember the name of it now.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure you were at high school. You were at a high school production. Now you're moving up to like a college level production. It's gonna be tighter.
My horizons are expanding by the minute.
Very good. John's wife is from Ripon, Wisconsin.
What?
Say hi to the family.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, great. You guys, hit some spots up.
Yeah, there's a musical you might want to check out this weekend.
All right. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us live next Wednesday morning when we record our podcast before the Thanksgiving break. For Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells, I'm David Mantey. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast. We'll see you next week.